I'd like to start by saying Mazel Tov to Gary and Audrey, who are here and just got married 2 weeks ago. Or was it 2 months ago? It was 2 weeks ago. It was 2 years. 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege and honor of officiating their wedding in Tel Aviv. It was in a beautiful location on the cusp of Tel Aviv and ancient Jaffa, a beautiful venue. It was an amazing evening. And they've been waiting for that moment for a long time. And it was a perfect evening, right? It was a perfect evening. We had like a really great 5 days in Tel Aviv. We had a really great 5 days. I also felt like it was a good time to bring my family to Tel Aviv. Things seemed calmer, and it felt like the sirens were more scarce. And for really a few days, it was just that. See, I love Tel Aviv. I lived there for 11 years before moving to the States. Before that, I lived in Rehovot. I've lived in Israel since I was a young boy. And right now, a very big section of the places I love in Tel Aviv is under construction. They're building the purple line of the light rail. That's what's happening in Tel Aviv, which is going to span through Allenby Street and Ben Yehuda. It's going to cross cities, and it'll reach the beach. And it's taken and will take many more years to build, but I now see, and we used a very, very much working red line. It's the red line of the light rail. The red line is working, and it's pretty amazing. It's like when I don't know if anybody's been in the red line, you should go, or if you haven't, you should go. It runs underground in a very big section in Tel Aviv, and it spans from Petah Tikva to Bat Yam. And a really good friend of mine commutes every day using the light rail from Petah Tikva to Tel Aviv. It's really changed the way that he commutes, and it's changed his life, really, on the way he commutes. And during this current operation between Israel and Iran, the underground section of the light rail has still been running, it's still been functioning. It's been running in full. And it's also being used as a mass shelter. You can see many Tel Avivians, and you can look at pictures of this online, setting up shop there, hunkering down, because the older buildings in Tel Aviv might not have a safe space. So they use the light rail stations, and you can see like just people like sleeping there overnight and setting up their areas there. So it's funny to think about it now, but when Rebecca and I planned to take this trip to Israel with our 3.5-year-old daughter Lily, who was born there and hasn't been there since she was 6 months old, what we were most worried about was how to explain a potential slim chance of a siren to Lily. We agreed that we'd say it was just a fire drill, because she knows about fire drills. Statistically, these days, there were 1 or 2 a week. So we said we'd take a chance. And for a few days, we thought we'd gotten lucky. No drills. We stayed in a nice apartment in Tel Aviv. We hung out with my mother and my brother in Rehovot, and things were good. But no coping ahead would have prepared us for what was to come. Because between Thursday and Friday last week, so a week and a little bit ago, at 3 a.m., there was a siren, a 2-minute long siren that I'm sure you heard about here, because I know you've been following, and I know you know what's happening. There was a 2-minute siren that really was just a wake-up call, to Israelis saying, we started an operation. Go back to sleep, but we started an operation. But we didn't understand that at the time, and at 3 a.m., we said, here's that siren, so we woke up, and we until we understood that we need to go back to sleep, we eventually did that. And the next day, we drove to my hometown, Rehovot, spent the night at friends who had a nice, safe room in their house. It was good to be with friends and family, but we found ourselves through the night going in that room many times, hearing booms outside. And we still held on to hope at that point. This was Friday night. We still held on to hope that our Thursday flight from Ben Gurion would fly. Right? And the next night, we spent at my mother's house in Rehovot. She has a community safe room, which is called a mamak. A mamad is like a safe room in the house, and a mamak is every floor should have a mamak, which is a smaller safe room that you can have on the floor in older buildings, on every floor. So it was more of like a long claustrophobic closet. That's a mamak. And this one, it's a little bit hard to explain because that night, which was, that was Saturday night. So that Saturday night was one of the scariest nights of my life. A missile fell 300 meters from us, which shook the walls, and it was, you know, we pray about these, the big, loud lights, and that it didn't feel like it was godly presence at that moment. It felt like it was existential, quite frankly. And it was a very, very scary moment, and the three of us were there together. The building shook, and we're on the almost top floor. And the day later, I found out that there were 2 missiles that hit Rehovot that night, and one of the missiles actually took down half of a building 300 meters from us, which is a building that one of the buildings I grew up in. I lived there for 6 years, and like half of the building was gone, right near the mall in Rehovot. And in the morning, Lily turns to us and said, after these sleepless nights, because Israel, basically right now even, it's full of, everybody is zombies. They're not sleeping at night. And I think maybe they've gotten a little bit more used to it now, but there was a really rough few days. In the morning, Lily turns to us and she says, "Wow, Daddy, Israel has a lot of fire drills." And that's when Rebecca and I looked at each other and we knew it was time to go. And but we couldn't because the skies were closed. They still are. The skies are closed right now. So we made a decision, and we were following on the footsteps of Gary and Adri, who gave us some really good advice, which I'll get to in a second. And like our ancestors before us, we decided to go to Egypt. And it wasn't simple. It wasn't an easy process because both the Israeli and American governments strongly advised against traveling through Sinai. I'm not endorsing going against government advisories, of course. This was a personal choice of ours. We assessed the risks, and thanks to Gary and Audrey, we were connected with an incredible driver and guide who helped us out and set us out on our own reverse exodus, as Jeff finally put it when we were talking. And so 5 days ago, we found ourselves at the Taba border crossing, the southern edge of Israel, where you walk into Egypt by foot. And if you've done this before, you know there's like this sort of neutral zone, and you walk. And here I am walking with tons of luggage and a 3.5-year-old in a stroller with my wife. And just as we were about to cross, an Egyptian border guard stopped us and asked for a crossing fee. So I had no idea what he was talking about because we had just stamped our passports. And so he told me that I'd missed a step and I had to go backwards and pay the fee. I pointed at my family and all this pile of luggage, and he said, I can go alone and they can stay here. Don't worry. That's when I start worrying, when he says, don't worry. But he said, don't worry, and we sort of looked at each other and we said, there's no way I'm going back. It was scorching heat outside. It was a khamsin, which, you know, the desert heat, that's the khamsin. To turn around with my wife, Rebecca, our 3.5-year-old daughter, Lily, all our luggage just was not an option. And so Becca and I nodded to each other. I walked back through the long line of people entering Egypt. And when I returned, sweaty and anxious, I found Lily in the air-conditioned guard booth, singing and dancing Pink Pony Club with the very serious-looking Egyptian guard from before, who has now had a big smile on his face. And that was a really magical moment for me, because Lily kept turning out to be our secret weapon on this trip. Our bat kol, if you would, our voice of reason, bringing peace to the Middle East wherever she went. And on the other side of the border, we met our driver. His name was Ramadan, who took us to Sharm el-Sheikh. I couldn't believe what a relief I had to meet someone named Ramadan. I can't believe that. And for a few days, that became our shelter in the wilderness. And we can look at this week's Parsha, which we're going to read soon, Parshat Shlach Lecha, about another journey, where God commands Moshe to send leaders to scout the land of Israel. They were so close to entering it at that point. They returned carrying its beauty, grapevines so large they needed 2 men to carry with a stick, which now is the symbol of Israel's tourism ministry. But also fear, fortified cities, giants. 10 of the 12 spies said, "We cannot do this," and only Joshua and Caleb urged the people to move forward. The people chose to believe in fear. The punishment was, as you know, you have to stay in the desert for 40 years. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs brings up a Hasidic teaching that offers a deep answer as to why the spies got it so wrong and brought on this punishment. The spies weren't afraid of the Canaanites, as this teaching says. The spies weren't afraid of the Canaanites. They were actually afraid of losing their current relationship with God that they had in the desert. This is according to this Hasidic teaching. So I'm going to say that again. It's not that the spies were afraid of the Canaanites, this teaching teaches us. They were afraid of losing their current relationship with God that they had in the desert. See, in the wilderness, they were fed manna, they were surrounded by clouds of glory, they were living each day in a miracle and in a mystery. Out there, they were close to God. If they entered the land, they'd have to plant, plow, work the land, build cities. They'd become just another nation. They didn't fear failing, they actually feared succeeding. And they were scared of that unknown. They feared the burdens of freedom, the work of building a just society, distractions of real life. So they chose to stay. But you can't stay for long because real life catches up with you, doesn't it? So it would have been easier for us to also stay in Israel, to wait it out there. It felt more familiar, and that was my tendency. And for a few days, Gary and Audrey we were talking, you should come. And for a few days I was saying, no, we should probably stay. Egypt was risky, it was unknown. It was out of our comfort zone. And for a few days, I really did resist. I waited it out. But we made that leap. We chose to move forward. And that was our personal choice. Along the road, it wasn't easy. There were some adventures. Thankfully, I didn't bring my guitar with me because that would have been really intense. I left my guitar here. But I accidentally brought all of my guitar capos, these things over here. And I brought all of them, like they were all in my bag. There were about 8 capos in my bag. And they almost confiscated all of them. I had to explain in Egypt what a capo was and how it worked. And they were like mysteriously like staring at it, not understanding. And we also had an extortion or two along the way that we had to go through. It could have been worse. But we also received a lot of strength from family, from friends, many of you who reached out and shared how you care about us. And that meant a lot. It really did. And yesterday, when we arrived at my in-laws in New Jersey, and I was watching an exhausted Lily at around 5 p.m. playing with the toys at Gaga's house, and Rebecca and I looked at each other and just started sobbing. We realized that we made it. And we don't yet know the full weight of what we just went through. And it's still unfolding as we speak, of course. But we made a choice, and just like Joshua and Caleb, we pushed to do it. We decided we can do it. We chose to move forward. The wilderness is sacred. It's where God speaks in silence, but we weren't meant to stay there forever. We need to grow up, and we can't stay protected forever. The question is, and the question that I've been asking myself while reading this Torah portion, is have we actually been grown-ups for too long? Have we forgotten what it means to be innocent? Have we forgotten what it means that we're all human? Watching Lily these past days, I've started to wonder, how many other Lilies are there out there on every side of this conflict? Children who just want to sing, play, be held. How can we find that innocence in ourselves again? That desert-like clarity, that simplicity, that singing and dancing, that realization that even a driver named Ramadan can bring some relief. Because maybe the real journey isn't just from Egypt to Israel or Israel to Egypt. Maybe it's from fear to trust, from paralysis to possibility, from fire drills to peace. So coming back to the United States, to my Jewish community, to Romemu, it doesn't have to mean that I need to have less nuance about this conflict. For me, it's not about blindly supporting Israel, whatever she does. It's about realizing that the people are what matter, that they come in all shapes and sizes and beliefs, and that they're there. That they, just like us, want a better world for their children and for generations to come. And it's good to be home. Shabbat Shalom.